I'm not sure where this comes from, this perception or this misperception, but it's probably the greatest single misperception that Pittsburgh football fans specifically have about this sport that they all know really well. Good afternoon to you. Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the new Double Shot Show. I would like to see in this city a Joe Burrow scenario. Everybody would. Everybody would love to see that no-brainer number one overall pick who just walks right in off the college campus, takes over, dominates. Everybody feels really comfortable about it. Everybody feels emboldened, empowered by it. We have our quarterback. We have our next Ben Roethlisberger. The catch to this is that there are so many different ways to do this. There's so many different ways to achieve this that it blows my mind that the only one that seemingly ever gets cited by anybody is that the team has to completely stink for a year or two to end up with the number one or number two overall pick. And then it's happy land. It's all awesome. There's so little other than Burrow himself to support this theory in the past, 5 to 10 years. The best quarterback of this generation, Patrick Mahomes, was a number 10 overall pick in 2017. You know who was a number 10 overall pick in 2019? That's right, pal, Devin Bush. And when the Steelers traded up to number 10 overall to get Bush, yeah, there was some excitement. There was some, hope and whatever, but nobody was going, the franchise is changed. Why? Oh, maybe because they saw Bush coming, but maybe just because it was a different position. With Mahomes, he came into Kansas City and stayed as a backup, remained as a backup in 2017 behind Alex Smith, whole year like that. And the son of a Pirates pitcher, of all things. Talk about having to carry some baggage through your professional life. And he went and got it done, just like that. And in hindsight, people do those fun exercises, those redrafts where you go back. If you had to do that draft all over again, how would you do it? These aren't just wrong occasionally. They're wrong all the time. It's an inexact science. I'm not even criticizing the people who do it. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the player. It has everything to do with the organization. Bryce Young goes number one overall, but he goes to the Panthers. He goes to Charlotte, where quarterbacks just go to die. Who gets taken behind him? C.J. Stroud. He goes to a well-run operation, at least of late, in the Texans. Stroud immediately succeeds. Young looks like a disaster, when in fact, maybe it's just the franchise that's a disaster. You don't know. You don't know. But this idea, the only reason I'm even getting into this is that there's constantly this concept put forth that the Steelers, look at them. They're always drafting in their 20s. They don't lose enough to get good draft picks. They don't win enough to win anything. It has nothing to do with quarterbacks, or very little to do with quarterbacks. If the Steelers really, really wanted, right now, and I don't think they will, this isn't a great class, and I'm completely convinced that they're bringing Justin Fields back, who incidentally was a number 11 overall pick himself. If they wanted to do this, they could do it. They could do it. You can always trade into the top 10. It's not that hard. Even the Steelers, who very rarely do stuff like that, did it with Bush. Heck, they moved up recently to get Broderick Jones. It wasn't into the top 10, but it was close. If you want to get up there, you can do it. If you want to draft the best quarterback in a class, you don't have to be number one. You just have to out-scout everyone else. You have to find Ben Roethlisberger when everybody else is looking at other guys. Ben was an 11. Ben was an 11. Think about that for a second. didn't even have to trade into the top 10 to get your quarterback for nearly 2 decades. When we come back, I'm going to continue this conversation with Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Joined now by Chris Halleck. And Chris, you did an analysis piece this week on DK Pittsburgh Sports, breaking down what Justin Fields can do, what he's already done in terms of the steps that he's taken with the Steelers, never mind his time with the Bears. And this is a player who has some actual promise. And I know that sounds uncomfortable for some people when you're talking about someone in their mid-20s, because that's it, they're done. We know who they are. They're absolutely set. But that's not the case, is it? Not in the NFL.
No, it's not. And as a matter of fact, I used the opportunity, when you go down to Mobile to cover the Senior Bowl, you're not just going there to cover college prospects. You're there with a whole bunch of scouts, not just Steelers scouts, but scouts from all over the league. And this is a great time to pick their brains and to ask them questions. And since the Steelers have a choice to make at what they're going to do with quarterback, and specifically with Justin Fields, I'm asking them, when do quarterbacks mature? Is there kind of a normal age that they kind of do? And a lot of them said not until they're about 28 or 30 years old. Now, there are some that can obviously mature before that, but also, and the big thing that was told to me by one scout who has almost 3 decades worth of experience, saying their situation absolutely matters. And when you look at Justin Fields and his situation in Chicago, it sucked. It was terrible.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And 2 head coaches in 3 years, 2 coordinators in 3 years. That's not a great situation for him to grow in. And he did grow with the Steelers. And so when you look at that and you think about the minimal cost that it would take to bring Justin back, it's probably something at least worth buying him, because there's not many other great options out there unless the Rams make Matthew Stafford available. And so you might as well go with the guy who's got a lot of upside.
And you also have circumstances that play out right in front of everybody's eyes, like Sam Darnold. Yeah. And you say, well, everybody gave up on Darnold. I mean, he was just, his career was DOA in the NFL. All of a sudden, what happens? He finds some coaching, he finds some instruction, he finds some coordinator, and things click. And everybody just says, oh, yeah, Darnold, yeah, we were high on him. We always felt like he had this, okay? But that's not something that seems to be universally accepted or even widely accepted. It's, you see the guy right away. You see the kid. He comes in right away, maybe with the Jets or the Giants, say, for example, okay? And everyone looks at him and goes, oh, it's an absolute catastrophe. Now, sometimes you can tell that there's a real miss at hand, like a Drew Lock, I think, all right? Where the first time I saw him, I was like, you got to be kidding. Okay, you've got to be kidding me. But then there's other ones where you say maybe you give them a little bit more time. Daniel Jones is for one of those for me. Okay, where I would look at him and I would see ridiculous mobility that he had for a big guy, and I would see the arm and I would see everything and character and all that other stuff. And you go, why can't he put it together? And all I'm thinking is, look at who he plays for.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But then his career is DOA.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why he, after the Giants cut him loose, he went to Minnesota is because he's probably seeing what Minnesota did with Sam Darnold. And so it was like, why don't I go to a situation in which, hey, they helped that guy turn into a better quarterback. Maybe they can help me, even if I'm sitting here on the practice squad. And so when you're looking at Justin's situation, he absolutely could just wait until free agency begins and really test his market and see what he could get. But he also has to consider his situation too. And he did grow with the Steelers. Granted, it was a 6-game sample size. And I still think that's kind of a small number to base off of. But at the same time, Arthur Smith, when he was offensive coordinator with the Titans, he took Ryan Tannehill, who was at that point listed as a first-round bust, I think by most people.
Yeah.
And at age 31, he turned into a Pro Bowl quarterback and won Comeback Player of the Year. And his 2 best seasons, far and away, were with Arthur Smith as coordinator in Tennessee. So you have to take that stuff into account too when you're talking about what's the best situation for me, whether it be for a year or 2 years or however long. So I think Justin has to take that into account too, while the Steelers also need to figure out their quarterback situation.
There's also, when you look at the path that quarterbacks take in the NFL, there's a lot of discussion in and around the league about these younger players, these younger guys just getting thrust into the situation. Why not? Because they're the prize draft pick. The teams might need to sell tickets or might need to get bigger headlines or draw big. And if you're in New York or New Jersey, you would have one team looking really hard to try to make sure that they're getting more attention. Well, look, it's so-and-so just got drafted number 1 overall. Look at us. What are you going to do? Leave them on the sideline? Guess what? Guess who was left on the sideline behind Alex Smith in 2017? Okay. Mm-hmm. That does happen. And it happens a lot in situations that turn out well. And I feel like, and this was a conversation I had with Mason Rudolph, fittingly, actually, of all people. Mason was a 3rd rounder, and he was coming in behind Ben Roethlisberger, so it's not the same, anywhere near the same scenario. But Mason is a student of the overall game, and he looks at quarterback situations around the league, and he told me, he says, you wouldn't believe the number of quarterbacks that just get ruined, like immediately. Because there's really not another position like it in sports, where you go from being told, here, you're this and you're that, and whatever, go get him, kid. It's the hardest, toughest thing to do, most complicated mentally position probably in all of sports. And go after him, make sure you read that safety. Good luck. Okay. And they go out there and they're like, remember you and I walking out of the stadium in Denver, convinced that Bo Nix was the worst thing we'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Okay. And I believe that's kind of, we were waiting for the Uber. That was somewhat how the terminology went.
Yeah.
That was the worst thing we've ever seen. He ended up being okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And every quarterback, like a lot of scouts told me while I was in Mobile, every quarterback grows at a different rate for a variety of reasons. And when you talk about quarterbacks being drafted and kind of being put on the bench and kind of learning and developing behind guys, no franchise does better than that than the Packers. I mean, they have gone from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. I mean, you're talking about decades worth of quarterback play with 3 guys.
And 3 guys, all of whom spent some kind of time in waiting and angst-filled and angry and whatever, but they waited and they got their turn and they certainly made the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously you brought up Patrick Mahomes. He's another guy. So yeah, and then you watch franchises like Cleveland who draft a quarterback every single year and pretty much
shove it right out there. Yep.
Yeah. Don't give them any chance to really learn. Don't get them in a good situation in terms of the offense, or maybe the offense is going to be okay, but the defense is terrible, whatever it is. Just, there are a lot of situations. And so when the Steelers look at what they have to do at quarterback, unfortunately, it's just not a great draft for quarterbacks. And that was the consensus around all of Mobile last week, was just, this is not a great quarterback class. It doesn't mean you have to ignore them. I do think the Steelers like Will Howard out of Ohio State, but that's not a guy who you're going to draft and be like, okay, you're going to be our guy day one. That would be a guy that if you take him in the 3rd round or 4th round, whenever it is, that you're going to have to let him grow and develop. You're going to have to let him be your number 2 for a while and see if he turns into anything, kind of like they did with Mason Rudolph. Now, obviously, Rudolph didn't really get his chance until after Ben retired, except for obviously the 2019 season when he got to step in, and that didn't go very well for him. So, I mean, it's one of the hardest things to do in this league is to find a quarterback, and there's so much pressure to do it because, well, if you don't have a quarterback, you usually don't win.
No.
So
it's that part's pretty basic for sure. When we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Time now for today's J1Q, and for that we head all the way out to the Midwest.
What's up, DK? Jeff in Illinois. I used to be one of those jokers who thought that Mike Tomlin got the majority of his victories with Bill Cowher's players. I've revised that thought over the last several years. I think he won the majority of his games with the leadership left over from Bill Cowher's players. People like Hines Ward on offense, James Ferrier on defense. I just don't see that leadership anymore in these teams. Do you think there's a leadership problem right now? Take it easy, buddy.
You know, that's not easy. That's not easy. I'm certainly not going to debate your initial point that the leadership that Tomlin inherited from Cowher's roster, especially on the defensive side, was through the roof. They had those guys on offense too. And I think that's the gap here. I think, I hate to keep belaboring a single prominent point here, but you have to take your offense seriously at some stage of this building or rebuilding or reloading or however it is that you'd care to label it. You have to say, we're going to put just as much into this offense as we do on defense. I look on the defensive side of the ball, I see leadership. Okay, I see TJ Watt over there. I see Alex Highsmith. I see Cam Hayward over there, the defensive captain, who is universally respected, not just in the Steelers world, but across football. I see Patrick Queen, who took the green dot duties, and he didn't just embrace them. He devoured them. He loved it. He loved being that guy. And he wasn't shy about getting into other people's faces or any of that kind of stuff. I see a Landon Roberts, a veteran over there. Even the younger guys carry themselves in a certain way that, like a Peyton Wilson, to an extent, to Joey Porter. And in the secondary, you're talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick, who might as well be a coach. That's the way he carries himself. So you have it over there. But you go to the other side of the ball, what are you looking at? Isaac Seumalo as a left guard. It's going to have to be Justin. It's going to have to be Justin Fields. But is that going to be enough? Is that going to be something where you can say, all right, Justin, you got to be, not just the prototypical field general and everything, but you've got to be responsible for how this guy over here isn't carrying the load or isn't doing his part. Where are those people on the offensive side of the ball? Where is, if you want to get specific about it, where's the one who's going to get into George Pickens' face? That doesn't happen. You said Hines Ward. That was a guy that you mentioned. Hines was very much that guy. Hines made sure that everybody was putting out, maybe not necessarily at a Hines level, but that it was an acceptable level, the standard. That's not there. So you might be onto something, Jeff. I cringe at least a little bit when leadership comes up, because it almost sounds like you're looking for a way to suggest that what's there talent-wise is okay, and it's not. It's not. The biggest issue, whether you're talking about just the Tomlin years after Cowher, or we're talking about now over the past half decade, probably two different dialogues. The current team, it just needs help on offense, and it needs a lot of help. I appreciate you, my man. I appreciate everybody checking out New Double Shot Show. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow.